A man named Peter Moss spent 9 hours a day for 9 months straight teaching two bottlenose dolphins to say a single English word. The word was Paul. The dolphins were called Buck and Ginger. They had been captured off the coast of Florida in the summer of 1972 and trained using an immediate reward system, which meant fish. Two backups were also trained, and two more dolphins, Bubbles and Paddlefoot, were brought in for open water filming. No training was required. And to herd those two around between takes, the production hired a wild terrier called Spider. A team of 40 professional adults, multiple specially trained marine mammals, and one worker dog worked in tropical seas for 3 months, all for a Hollywood movie about a scientist whose dolphins are kidnapped to murder the President of the United States. Just when you thought some ideas were too deranged to ever get greenlit by a Hollywood studio, along comes Day of the Dolphin. Welcome back. Today we explain how a $750,000 check, a Bahamas island, and a screenwriter doing dolphin impressions off camera all add up to one seriously expensive lesson for an unfortunate man named Mike Nichols. By the time The Day of the Dolphin hit cinemas in December 1973, it had been in development for 4 years and 8 months. On paper, the talent was a murderer's row. The director was Mike Nichols, the man behind Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Graduate, and Carnal Knowledge, one of the golden boys of the new Hollywood. The screenwriter was Buck Henry, who had adapted The Graduate and Catch-22 for the same director. The cinematographer was William A. Fraker, fresh off Bullet and Rosemary's Baby. The lead was George C. Scott, the actor who had just refused his Oscar for Patton, the most feared man in American film. The producer was Joseph E. Levine, and he had just had the highest grossing film in 1967 and 2 Oscar nominations. All these heavy hitters combined to create a flop that almost nobody, even now, has heard of, let alone seen. The story begins with a tragedy. In April 1969, United Artists bought the screen rights to a 1967 novel by the French writer Robert Merle. The book was a Cold War satire about a marine biologist who teaches dolphins to speak and then watches the intelligence services try to turn them into weapons. United Artists hired Roman Polanski, fresh off Rosemary's Baby, the hottest director in the world, to write and direct the adaptation. Filming was scheduled for late 1969 on locations in Florida and San Diego. By multiple later accounts, Jack Nicholson signed on to play the lead, which would have made The Day of the Dolphin the first collaboration between Polanski and Nicholson 5 years before Chinatown. In the summer of 1969, the Polanskis split to work on separate projects. Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, flew to Italy to make a comedy called 13 Chairs. Roman flew to London to write The Day of the Dolphin screenplay. One of his closest friends, Polish writer Wojtek Frykowski, had been doing dolphin research for the project. Then, on the night of August 8th, 1969, 4 members of the Manson family entered the house on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles and murdered 5 people. Sharon Tate and Wojtek Frykowski were among them. Polanski in London abandoned the film. By February 1970, United Artists had given the project to Franklin J. Schaffner, the director of Patton. That fell apart too, before a frame was shot. In March 1972, the property changed hands again. It was bought by Joseph E. Levine's Avco Embassy Pictures. Schaffner was out. Levine happened to own the services of one of the most in-demand directors in Hollywood. The director was Mike Nichols. He very badly wanted out. However, back in 1969, Avco Embassy had bought Nichols' production company, Freiwaft, put Nichols on the Avco board, and signed him to make 2 films for them. Carnal Knowledge in 1971 was the first. Levine wanted The Day of the Dolphin to become the second, but Nichols spent 2 years trying to wriggle out of it, at one point trying to break the contract entirely. He couldn't. Levine was not about to release his prize director from his contract. And so one of Avco Embassy's board members was forced to make a film for Avco Embassy he did not want to make. Per a friend of his, quoted in the 2019 oral history Life Isn't Everything, Nichols spent the early 1970s saying over and over again, I have got to just get this failure out of the way. Now, you are probably thinking, surely Mike Nichols had other options, and you would be right. This is the part of the story that if you love Mike Nichols, you do not want to hear. Mark Harris's 2021 biography confirms that Mike Nichols was offered the chance to direct Chinatown. He turned it down. He was also offered The Exorcist. He turned that down too. And then Chinatown went to the very man who had originally been hired to make The Day of the Dolphin. Roman Polanski returned to American filmmaking in 1974 with Jack Nicholson and made one of the greatest films ever produced. Nichols, meanwhile, was in the Bahamas teaching a dolphin to say pa. For the screenplay, Nichols called in his old partner, Buck Henry, collaborator on The Graduate and Catch-22. Henry took the job under protest. In 2003, he was candid about the problem. The novel was this giant, sprawling mess with two fundamentally unbelievable pieces built into it. And once you remove those pieces, everything falls apart. He removed them anyway. He stripped out the Cold War satire, the dolphin philosophy, the Chinese geopolitics, the entire point of the original book, and instead wrote a simpler, paranoid thriller about a White House assassination conspiracy involving a marine mammal. In 1973, a paranoid thriller about a White House conspiracy was, in theory, a hot commodity. The Parallax View was a year away. 3 Days of the Condor was 2. All the President's Men was 3. The trouble is, none of those films contain a single dolphin, which turned out to be the secret to their success. For the lead, Levine wrote George C. Scott a check for $750,000, a massive paycheck, over $5 million in today's money. He was the gravest, most respected, and most feared actor in American film. The role was, in many ways, the obvious fit. Trish Van Devere, Scott's real-life wife, was cast as his on-screen wife. Buck Henry, asked about working with Scott, gave maybe the most accurate two-line description of a major movie star ever recorded. He could be a nightmare, but he was a blessing. He could do an awful lot with an awful little. Shooting began late December 1972 on Abaco Island in the Bahamas at Galleon Bay and Treasure Cay. The shoot ran 3 months. The Abaco location offered the cast and crew little to do except eat, drink, swim, and play tennis. Hold on to that detail. It will matter shortly. The Dolphins, 6 of them trained for 9 hours a day for 9 months by the head trainer Peter Moss, became, by all accounts, the most reliable performers on the production. Buck and Ginger played Alpha and Beta. Bubbles and Paddlefoot did the open water scenes, with Spider the Wild Terrier herding them between takes. During the actual scenes between Scott and the lead dolphin, Buck Henry, the screenwriter, would stand off camera in the Bahamian sun and provide the dolphin's voice live on set. A grown man squeaking out lines like Fa Want Be now in baby talk falsetto, so that one of Hollywood's most respected actors could respond with the appropriate level of gravitas. The dolphin voices in the final film are a mix, partly Buck Henry, partly actor Robert Lydiard, partly mechanical noises, partly real dolphin clicks. The magic of Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. 3 days into the shoot, Scott reported in with a virus. Joseph E. Levine was quoted in a Variety feature the following year titled Disrespects Paid Scott by Levine, and I am not making this up. Levine said Scott got paid $750,000 for that movie and ran them over schedule. The first 3 days of shooting, Scott reported in with a virus. Those quotation marks around the word virus did some of the heaviest lifting in the history of trade paper interviews. Here was a man forced to act alongside a baby, talking screenwriter who was known to drink heavily on an island with little to do except drink heavily, so who would not come down with a virus in those circumstances? Levine took potshots at his director as well. He said the rushes looked great, but it just did not gel somehow. He said he really thought Mike Nichols was the wrong guy to direct. Trash talking the man you forced into the director's chair against his will. In a magazine the entire industry reads, it is probably fair to say that no one came out of that situation smelling of roses. And now, the part of the story that everyone has gotten wrong for 50 years. The version that you might have heard is that the lead dolphins, Buck and Ginger, escaped on the second to last day of filming and were never seen again. It is a beautiful story. It is also wrong. What really happened is that the stunt dolphins, Bubbles and Paddlefoot, were spooked by a passing powerboat and deserted the production. The lead dolphins, Buck and Ginger, were released to the sea as planned after shooting finished, sent home with full pension and the studio's gratitude. Of everyone involved in this production, director, screenwriter, lead actor, and producer, the only collaborators who left voluntarily on schedule after a job well done were the Dolphins. The Day of the Dolphin opened on December 19th, 1973, 2 days before The Sting, 4 days before Magnum Force, and 7 days before The Exorcist. The Exorcist was the film, you will recall, that Mike Nichols had turned down. The Exorcist would go on to gross $440 million and become one of the most successful horror films ever made. The Day of the Dolphin would go on to gross $2.3 million domestically on a budget of $8.1 million, a budget that in today's money is roughly $58 million. The film was sold as a family-adjacent talking dolphin movie and ended with the dolphins being told to swim away and never come back. It was released at Christmas. Not a great plan. Most critics dismantled it. Stanley Kaufman in The New Republic called it a shameless cash grab, saying, "I called the picture a failure, but that implies an attempt. I feel a real effort in only the first 4 or 5 minutes." Ouch. Paul and Kyle in The New Yorker famously suggested that if the best subject Mike Nichols and Buck Henry could think of to make a movie about was talking dolphins, then they should stop making movies altogether. Only Gene Siskel in the Chicago Tribune stood up for it, writing that ultimately the Day of the Dolphin works because of the values it celebrates and Scott communicates. The values are communication and love. 1 out of 4. Miraculously, the film did receive 2 Academy Award nominations, Best Original Score for Georges Delerue and Best Sound. Meanwhile, the only award the film actually won was given to a dolphin. Alpha won Best Animal Actor at the 24th Patsy Awards. A deserved win for a seasoned pro. Mike Nichols did not direct another feature film for 8 years. When he returned with Silkwood in 1983, it earned him a Best Director nomination and marked the beginning of a remarkable second act. One that would include Working Girl, Postcards from the Edge, The Birdcage, and Angels in America. After The Graduate, Catch-22, and The Day of the Dolphin, Nichols and Buck Henry never made another film together. 3 films. 2 for the ages, 1 for the Dolphins. Joseph E. Levine resigned as president of Avco Embassy on May 28, 1974, 5 months after The Day of the Dolphin opened. By 1975, the company had stopped producing films entirely. Levine made A Bridge Too Far in 1977 and one final film, Tattoo, in 1981. He died in 1987. So what do we take from The Day of the Dolphin? 3 things. First, if nobody actually wants to make a film, that ought to tell you something. Nichols owed Levine a film. Dolphin was the property sitting in the drawer. None of the principals, not the director, not the writer, not even the producer, sat down and asked the question, should this be made? If they had, the answer would have been a deep, booming no. Second, genre confusion can kill any movie. Dolphin is a paranoid thriller, a family animal movie, an ecological message picture, and a sentimental love story between a man and an aquatic mammal, all in the space of 104 minutes. Lastly, some films are begging not to be made. The Day of the Dolphin began on August 8, 1969, with one of the darkest nights in the modern history of Los Angeles. From that moment on, fate seemed to be against it. The Day of the Dolphin burned through 3 directors, 4 years, 3 studios, and 40 months of pre-production before it ever arrived on screen. And when it did arrive, it arrived with the wrong director, the wrong star, the wrong fee, the wrong release date, and a final cut that even its own director would spend the next 40 years politely never discussing in public. Buck and Ginger swam home. By any measure, theirs was the only happy ending. That's all the disaster we can take for today. See you in the next one.